Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Hannah and let's talk Les Miserables. So, I still don't know what these things are called in my teeth, but whatever they are still yellow from that meal I had. And it's not fading at all like I hoped it would, so if you do notice that, please ignore it because I really hate it. Also, I realized I freaking started laundry and now I'm doing this. Like, I don't know why I keep doing that. So if you do hear the laundry in the background, I apologize for that. But today is a bit of a day. The worst part is already over, thank God. It's actually like, what time is it? It's past 5 p.m., right?
It's 5.
Oh, it's exactly 5. And it's already getting dark outside. Fun. But today was actually my appointment at the prefecture here for my renewal of my residence card or carte de séjour. And that went fine, I guess. Their process is more online now. And so like they gave me the date and time I had to come in. And we waited an hour, well over an hour because they were 45 minutes behind on appointments. But like the thing itself literally only took 3 minutes. It was really weird. They were just like, do you have all the documents? And it's like, yes, question mark. And there's like, okay, bye. So hopefully that's fine. But then tonight at midnight, the new expansion for WoW is released. So a bit of a long day. We are 7 hours away from that right now. But yeah, we're definitely staying up to play some of that when that comes out. So I might pop back in here later. But I did read a chapter in Les Miserables today, and it's a pretty quick one, so I think I'm actually going to read the whole thing. And even though this is book 5, that's titled Grandson and Grandfather, which obviously refers to Marius and his grandpa, Gillenormand, this first chapter has nothing to do with them. It is actually about Jean Valjean, and in particular, a minor character that I really had to think about. There was a point in here where I realized who this person is supposed to be, but it's called We Again See the Tree with a Zinc Plate, which reading that, I was like, I don't recall a tree with a zinc plate at all. But this is on page 1110, and it says, sometime after the events we have described, Boulatruelle had a severe shock. It's just like, who the fuck is that? And obviously now we're doing a bit of a time skip, which I think is kind of interesting. I was not expecting that at all. It says, Boulatruelle was the Montfermeil road mender whom we met in an earlier part of this tale. He was a man of many troubles, whose stone breaking caused vexation to travelers on the road, but he cherished a dream. He believed in the treasure buried in the woods of Montfermeil and hoped to find it. In the meantime, he picked the pockets of passers-by when he could. And so this kind of jogged my memory a bit. I vaguely remember, because it's definitely been a long time ago, that there was like basically this legend about this guy that would come every so often, and he would always have like a pick and like a sack or whatever. And so it like just became this like local legend there, and there was people like this guy that believed it and would try to go out and find this supposed treasure for themselves. And if you remember, it's actually the money that Jean Valjean had made when he was the mayor, and it's where he hid it basically. And so this legend is literally the times that he's come back to get more money. So continuing on, it says, but for the present, he was being prudent. He had had a narrow escape, having been rounded up in the Jondrette garret with the other gangsters. Drunkenness had saved him, since it could not be proved that he had been there with criminal intent, and so he had been granted an acquittal, based on his undeniably drunken state. He had then returned to the woods and the road from Gagny to Lagny, where under administrative supervision and in a subdued manner, warmed only by his fondness for wine, he had continued to break stones. The shock was as follows. One morning, just before daybreak, going as usual to work, but perhaps a little more awake than on most days, he had seen among the trees the back view of a stranger who did not appear wholly unfamiliar. Drinker though he was, Boulatruelle had an excellent memory, a necessary weapon for anyone somewhat at odds with the law. Where the devil have I seen him? He wondered, but could find no answer to the question. He considered the matter. The man was not local. He must have come on foot, since no public conveyance passed at that hour. He could not have come from any great distance, since he had no bundle or haversack. Perhaps he had come from Paris, but what was he doing there? Boulatruelle thought of the hidden treasure. Ransacking his memory, he recalled a similar encounter some years before. He had bowed his head while thinking, which was natural but unwise. When he looked up, the man was no longer to be seen. By God, I'll find him, said Boulatruelle. I'll find out who he is and what he's up to. Can't have secrets in my woods. He took up his pick, which was very sharp. good for digging into the earth or into a man. He set off in the general direction taken by the man. Before long, he was helped by the growing daylight. Footprints here and there, crushed bushes, and other indications afforded him a rough trail, which, however, he lost. Pushing further into the wood, he climbed a small hillock and then had the idea of climbing a tree. Despite his age, he was agile. There was a tall beech, and he climbed it as high as he could. From this eminence, he saw the man, only to lose him again. The man had vanished into a clearing surrounded by tall trees, but Balachuel knew the clearing well because one of the trees was a chestnut that had been mended with a sheet of zinc nailed to the bark. Doubtless, the heap of stones in the clearing is still there. There is nothing to equal the longevity of a heap of stones. Balachuel almost fell out of the tree in his delight. He had run his man to earth, and doubtless the treasure as well, but to reach the clearing was not easy. Following the twisted paths, it took a quarter of an hour, but to go direct, forcing one's way through the toughest undergrowth, took twice as long. Balachuel made a mistake. For once in his life, he took the straight line. It was a laborious business. When, breathless, he reached the clearing some half an hour later, he found no one there, and Ori wants to bite the bag. Hey, can you not? I'm reading here. Only the heap of stones was there. No one had taken that away. But the man himself had vanished. No one could say in what direction. Worse still, behind the heap of stones and near the tree with its zinc plate was a pile of earth, an abandoned pickaxe, and a hole. The hole was empty. Scoundrel! Cried Boulatruelle, flinging up his arms. And I know I said this was Jean Valjean, but now I'm kind of wondering, I feel like it has to be since the guy kind of recognized him, but why would he just leave the hole or he jumped in the chair. But why would he leave the hole, uncovered and leave the pickaxe there? That just feels strange and not very Jean Valjean-esque. I feel like he tries to not leave an imprint wherever he is. So I find that a little bit curious. But then the next chapter is called From Street Warfare to Domestic Conflict, and I believe this is going back to Marius, considering his name is literally the first word of that sentence. So it seems like Jean Valjean has gotten the rest of his money, and so I'm wondering if he is going to move somewhere else or try to take Cosette with him or leave Cosette with Marius and go somewhere else. I'm not really sure where that's going to take us, but I guess now we're going to see how Marius has healed if we're doing a bit of a time skip, it seems. And gosh, that just feels so weird because it's all those people died and now we're just kind of and however many weeks or months later. But that's all for today, since there is going to be a lot of video gaming happening this evening, and because of that, I'm not really sure if I'll be back tomorrow or not, but yeah, we are almost in December, I just realized, oh my god. So yeah, we'll see what happens. And we are to the last day of November. I almost said the year. Not quite yet. We have a whole other month to get through first. But, of course, when I have the window open for once, it's going to be super loud outside. I just got back from the library about 20-25 minutes ago, and I read 2 chapters in Les Miserables today. And I had to go to the library today. Absolutely had to, because the book was due. And so last night, I think I started at 10 p.m. and finished at 12:30 in the morning. The second half of Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. It's literally taken me almost this entire month to read this book, which is weird because I'm actually really enjoying it, but I just really haven't felt like reading, and we've had 2 major video game releases, so we've been kind of obsessed with that. So I really just haven't had the time to read like I usually do. So this month has really been strange for reading. I think I only read 4 books, and one of them was a manga, so yeah. Didn't accomplish much there, but I had to return it today, otherwise I would have had a fine. And so I ended up picking up from the new section, Women, is it Women or Woman? Woman Eating, which is by Claire Coda, and this is really glaring on here. Let's see. All right, there. That's okay. I think this is a bit of a cannibal story, if I'm not mistaken, / vampire. Kayla at Books and Lala actually read this and really enjoyed it, but it's a slower kind of book. I didn't even bother reading the description, but I think it's her telling the story, and she's in a hospital or an insane asylum or something like that, and she's kind of just telling her story kind of thing. And then there's this section at the library where if you go down one of the hallways directly to the right, there is a shelf that is all anthologies, and I noticed before that a lot of them are ghost stories, but I never really looked through them. So I just kind of gave it a glance, And I found this. It's called The Haunted Looking Glass. And I really liked the cover. Like, the spine is probably what stood out to me, actually. And it says it's ghost stories chosen by Edward Gorey, which appropriate last name there. But I've never heard of him. And I was just like trying to find a list of the ones that are in here, but apparently there's also illustrations. There's a story by Charles Dickens in here. There's a story by Bram Stoker, which I didn't see before, and cats are fighting in the background there. And it's actually one I haven't heard of. It's called The Judge's House. I haven't read anything by Bram Stoker, so reading a short story by him would be really cool. There's Wilkie Collins, who I've heard that name before. Algernon Blackwood, I think I've also heard of that, but I don't think I've heard any of the other stories. I have stuff I want to read here at home, so I just wanted to pick up one book, but then I was like, an anthology, that's something I don't have to read all at once. So I just wanted some things that were shorter, so I can read what I want to read here as well. So that's what I did today, and now to Les Miserables. Not much happened in these chapters. It's mainly just Marius's recovery. And so, oh my god, Ori is running back and forth. Can you not? Hey, oh, okay, and he just pulled a bunch of stuff on top of him. Can I please do this? Stop, you can't come through here. So anyway, the first chapter I read is called From Street Warfare to Domestic Conflict, and this is pretty much just Marius, and now he's meowing. Marius has been in a coma for 3 months, actually. Like, he doesn't know what's happening to him or where he is or anything during those 3 months. And this is on page 1112, and it says, there are always injuries which refuse to heal and cause great vexation to the sufferers. But on the other hand, his long illness and convalescence saved Marius from the authorities. In France, I'm sorry if you can hear Ori in the background. He is currently going into his demon mode, where he sounds like he needs an exorcism. In France, there's no anger, not even official, that 6 months do not extinguish. And uprisings in the present state of society are so much the fault of everyone that it is better for eyes to be closed. We may add that Guiquet's inexcusable order instructing doctors to denounce the wounded outraged not only public opinion, but that of the king himself, and this protected them. Apart from 1 or 2 who were captured in the fighting, they were not troubled, and so Marius was left in peace. So pretty much the only visitor during this time. It implies heavily it's Jean Valjean, and he goes every day bringing like fresh bandages and asking how Marius is. So for 3 months he's in a coma, but then when he wakes up, he must still stay where he is for a further 2 months because his shoulder blade's like really messed up and still needs to heal. And after they get the news that he's going to be fine, he's out of the danger zone after those first 3 months, his grandfather actually starts to kind of come alive again and have like all this weird energy and stuff. It says, his state of rapture grew as the patient's condition improved. He did absurd, extravagant things, such as running up and down stairs without knowing why. His neighbor, a pretty woman be it said, was astonished to receive a large bouquet from him, greatly to her husband's annoyance. He even tried to take Nicolette on his knee. He addressed Marius as Monsieur le Baron and cried, "Long live the Republic." He watched over the prodigal like a mother, no longer thinking of himself. Marius had become the master of the house, and he, surrendering, was his grandson's grandson, the most venerable of children. Such was his state of happiness. He was radiant and young, his white hair lending dignity to the warm shining in his face. So basically his grandfather is like completely changed, like personality and everything. Then it goes into a paragraph here where I see where the song, like, I know it has to do with empty chairs. It's something empty chairs and something faces. I'm gonna have to look it up. I can't remember the name of the song. Empty chairs at empty tables. I thought that wasn't right, but it is. Okay. So there's a paragraph here where it really shows where they get the inspiration for that song. But pretty much that chapter just ends where Marius is like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to talk to my grandpa about Cosette. Like, oh man. And so he's literally coming up with what he's considering like a battle plan of talking to his grandpa, and there's Ori going crazy in the background. So that brings chapter 3, which is literally called Marius Attacks. And it doesn't go exactly how Marius was planning. Like, his grandpa just instantly agrees with him. He's literally like, there's something I have to say to you. What is it? I want to get married. But of course, said the old man laughing. How do you mean, of course? That's understood. You shall have your little girl. Marius trembled with sheer amazement. You shall have her, Monsieur Gillenormand repeated. She comes here every day in the shape of an elderly gentleman who asks for news of you. Since your injury, she has spent her time weeping and making bandages. I know all about her, and etc, etc. So that whole chapter is literally just Marius being astonished that he's getting like his blessing from his grandpa, and he once again calls him father, and so the grandpa is just like, oh my god, you do love me, and they're just like holding each other and weeping, but all Marius can think about is Cosette. And I feel really bad, like, even though the grandpa was like a terrible person, I still feel bad for him, because he's like basically saying stuff to please Marius, but Marius just does not give a fuck about him. He can only think of Cosette, and that whole single-mindedness throughout this entire book has just been insane to me. So that's where I ended today. What even is the next chapter called? I didn't see. Oh, it's called Mademoiselle Gillenormand and Monsieur Fauchelevent, which I'm now just like, please don't tell me Jean Valjean is gonna like fall in love with the grandpa's daughter. Like, that would be odd. That would be a bit too weird. So I'm hoping that's not where that's gonna go. But also at the end of that chapter, he said that Cosette could see him tomorrow, but then Marius is like, why not today? So they're like, fine, whatever. So I assume Cosette's now gonna be brought into the picture. Everyone's gonna be together for the first time. So I'm intrigued to see how that interaction is gonna go. But I think that means that literally all that's gonna be left is the wedding, and then the book will be over. I mean, also Jean Valjean's death, I assume, which we'll see if I cry reading it in the book as I did while watching the musical. Oh no. Cat smackdown. The fuck were you? Get your dumb face. Oh god.
Hey, no. Come on. It's me too much.
Oh. One of Thomas' coworkers just got him on a video call, so I don't want to disturb him or anything, and I was just about to film for the day, so I figured I would just kind of like lock myself in the kitchen, so it might be a little echoey in here because I do have the door closed, so yeah, there's that. But I literally just finished reading my chapter in Les Miserables today, and whoo, the grandpa, oh, that went backwards. But anyway, the grandpa says some a bit disturbing things that definitely don't fly today. So this chapter is pretty much just Cosette and Marius seeing each other again. This is on page 1116. Cosette and Marius saw one another again. What it meant to them we shall not attempt to say. There are things beyond description, of which the sun is one. And so Cosette comes in with Jean Valjean, obviously. They're still going under the names like Fauchelevent or whatever. And so the grandpa just says to Jean Valjean, like, I give them my blessing, everything is fine. And so on the very next page, they say, then that is settled, said the old man, and turning to Marius and Cosette with arms upraised, he said, my children, you are free to love one another. They did not need telling twice. The billing and cooing began. To see you again, Cosette murmured, standing by the chaise longue. To know that it is really you. Why did you go and fight? How dreadful. For 4 months I felt that I was dead. And she literally goes on and on and on, just talking about nothing. And all Marius says is, Angel. And it's like, really? But then they get kind of awkward because the room's literally full of people like staring at them, and so they just kind of get quiet and are just like holding hands and staring at each other. And so on the next page it says, well, talk, can't you? Make a little noise so that they can chatter in comfort. He bent over them. And call each other too. Don't be afraid. Aunt Gillenormand, with a kind of amazement, was observing the bright scene in her faded home. There was nothing shocked or envious in her gaze. It was that of an innocent creature of 57, a wasted life witnessing the triumph of love. Her father said to her, I told you this would happen to you. He paused and went after a moment's silence, to see the happiness of others. Then he turned to Cosette, and this is where it gets weird. So sweetly pretty, like a painting by Greuze. And to think that she's to be all yours, you rascal. If I weren't 15 years too old, we'd fight a duel for her. Remind you, he's 90. Young lady, I am in love with you, and no wonder. What a charming wedding it will be. And then he talks a bit about where they'll be getting married in the church. You must go there when you're married. I am wholly on your side, mademoiselle. All young ladies should get married. It's what they're for. Be fruitful and multiply. What can be better than that? The old man skipped on his 90-year-old heels and said to Marius, by the way, did you not have a close friend? There was Courfeyrac. What's become of him? He's dead. Ah, well. Like, what the fuck? So Yeah, there's some comments in there that definitely don't like very much. All young ladies should get married. It's what they're for. Yeah, we're just gonna skip over that for now. And so the rest of the chapter is literally like the grandpa being like, what's gonna happen when I die? Like, what are you gonna do for money? And Jean Valjean is like, she has 600,000 francs, and just sets this bundle on the table, and it's all that fucking money. So you know that's what he went and dug up. And it's just like, what the hell? Marius and Cosette don't even realize this is happening. Like, literally the last sentence is, but as to Marius and Cosette, they were gazing into each other's eyes, scarcely aware of this trifle. And so I think what's gonna happen is this is kind of Jean Valjean like giving Cosette to Marius, and now he's gonna move on kind of thing. Because he said 600,000 minus a few thousand, and so it's like 584,000 altogether, I think. So I'm assuming he's gonna take the difference and kind of use it to live out the rest of his life, like quietly and whatever, how he can. And he's giving the rest to Cosette. And that is just crazy. And it's so weird because Jean Valjean says, trust the young people of nowadays, as if she made all this money herself. And it's just like, dude, that's from you. Like, it's literally an inheritance. So I find it a little weird. Pretty much, Cosette and Marius are going to be set for life now. And literally the next chapter is called How to Safeguard Your Money. And so I think it's going to get a little bit boring now, unfortunately. But especially now that they're all together and everything. But yeah, it truly seems like all that's left is just the wedding now. And so it seems like we're going to get into the wedding plans and stuff. But goodness, did Cosette and Marius make it out well in life? And so from here, I'm actually curious to see if any of the Thénardiers pop back in. Obviously, Gavroche and Eponine are dead. And we never found out what happened to the mom. And we've only just briefly seen the dad again. And so we'll see if they kind of crash the wedding at all. So that's where I'm at today. That's where I'm going to end. There's really nothing else happening today. I actually just got done filming the November wrap-up, where I only read 4 books this month because I am in a reading slump and playing video games instead of reading. And so my throat actually feels really weird. Like, I feel like my voice sounds deeper than it usually is because I have been talking for like half an hour straight now. But luckily, that's all done. Hopefully I can get back to editing videos more regularly again. But I wouldn't count on it. So yet again, time got away from me on Saturday, and today is actually Sunday. So yesterday we went to a Swedish Christmas market at the Swedish church, and I was wondering how it was going to be set up, and what I thought it was going to be was correct. Like, everything was inside the church. They have like a little courtyard, and they used their chapel actually as a cafeteria. And so they had like 2 pews would be facing each other, and they had like tables in between. Like, it was actually a really good idea, I thought. And I'm actually surprised, like, they were, I guess, ballsy enough to do that, because I feel like some people would get offended that they were using, like, their chapel for eating and stuff. It was really interesting. They were selling a bunch of, like, Swedish pastries, cakes. They even had what was essentially, like, a tiny Swedish grocery store. They had a bunch of candy, so we got some pastries and candies from there. And then after that, we went to a little free exhibit that I've been wanting to go to for a few weeks now, and there is a hair on my lips. Ooh, I think I just got it. God, I hate when it does that. Anyway, it's at the Gallery Paris Cinema Club, I think it's called, and it's a free exhibit for Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which comes out in just a few days from now. And like, it's stop motion, and so they have like the actual statues from the movie there, and a bunch of like concept art and cells from the movie, and they also had like a behind the scenes video playing. And it was really cool. I really liked it. It was small but interesting, and it was something, it's only going to be there for like a week or 2 longer, and so I really wanted to see that before it left. So that was a nice like early afternoon for us. But I just finished reading 3 chapters in Les Miserables actually, and unfortunately they're really boring. Like, not much is going on here. They're literally just like talking about like wedding plans mostly, and it's not even that. It's just like people telling them, trying to give them like love advice and stuff. It's really strange. But the first chapter is the how to safeguard your money, and I thought it was gonna be like Jean Valjean talking to Cosette maybe or something like that. But no, it's just Victor Hugo confirming, hey, the person that was out there burying the money and going out there with a pickaxe and digging up stuff that we talked about every now and then was Jean Valjean. And it's like, no shit, we obviously knew that by now. So that's literally all that chapter is. It's like not even a full page long. However, I am going to read the last paragraph from that chapter. This is on page 1120, and it says, for the rest, Valjean knew that he had nothing more to fear from Javert. It had been reported in the Moniteur that his drowned body had been found under a washerwoman's boat between the Pont au Change and the Pont Neuf. He had been a policeman with an irreproachable record, highly esteemed by his superiors, who concluded that he must have committed suicide while of unsound mind. Well, reflected Jean Valjean, since he had me and let me go, that may well be true. And then the next chapter is called Two Old Gentlemen Prepare for the Happiness of Cosette. And this is another slightly weird chapter because it's basically both Jean Valjean and Monsieur Gillenormand being like, Cosette deserves the world, she's perfect, she can do no wrong, like, oh my god, Marius is so lucky kind of thing. And that's really all this chapter is. Like, apparently Cosette really likes Monsieur Gillenormand because he just showers her with gifts, and I'm just like, that's a little superficial. But the first paragraph says, preparations for the wedding were put in hand. The month was December, and the doctor being consulted declared that it might take place in February. Several weeks of perfect bliss ensued, and Monsieur Gillenormand was far from being the least happy. He spent hours in the contemplation of Cosette. And I feel like that right there is a really good summary for literally the entirety of this chapter. And then it goes on to say that Jean Valjean is the one that's actually planning everything with the wedding. Like, since he used to be a mayor, he's used to having to do all this kind of stuff. And he goes through and forges a bunch of documents and tries to get Cosette's civil status to make sense. So he basically just ends up saying, like, she's an orphan, she's not his, but she's another Fauchelevent because that's the last name they're using, and so they're still like related kind of thing. It basically gets her all set up to where she has the paperwork and everything needed to prove who she is to be able to get married kind of thing. And like during this, Cosette then learns that Jean Valjean is not her real father, but since she's so like happy with Marius and preoccupied with him, she doesn't care. Like she, like it's so weird. This is on the very next page. It says, Cosette had to learn that she was not the daughter of the old man whom for so long she had addressed as father, and that another Fauchelevent was her real parent. As at any other time she would have been greatly distressed, but in her present state of happiness this scarcely troubled her. She had Marius, and the coming of the young man made the older less important. And all her life she had been surrounded by mystery, but that this last change was not hard to accept. In any case, she continued to call Jean Valjean father. And I feel like this is just so glossed over. She had Marius, so like Jean Valjean just doesn't matter anymore. Like, it's just so weird. Like, damn, it's a bit insulting too for how much he's fucking done for her throughout his whole life. Like, it's insane. And then the whole rest of the chapter is literally just like Monsieur Gillenormand going on a rant about how the bourgeoisie of today is like really crap. I see Dorothy. Are you doing mischief over there? What you doing? But he's talking about how the bourgeoisie of today is just like trash compared to when he was young, that no one understands extravagance nowadays, and that everyone's just too serious and stuff. But then he says something I thought was interesting. This is on page 1122. It says, in Strasbourg Cathedral, there's a clock the size of a 3-story house which condescends to tell you the time, but does not seem to exist for that alone. Whatever hour it strikes, midday, the hour of the sun, or midnight, the hour of love, it seems to be giving you the sun and the stars, earth and ocean, kings, emperors, and the 12 apostles, and in a troop of little gilded men playing the trumpet. All this thrown in. How does a mere bare dial pointing the hours compare with that? The great clock of Strasbourg, and not just a Black Forest cuckoo clock, is what suits me. And I thought it was so interesting that this got mentioned because we are going to Strasbourg in literally 2 days. On Tuesday, we're going there for a day trip for the Christmas market, and so one of the things we're going to see is the clock in the cathedral. And the very last paragraph of this chapter is, It was arranged that the couple should live with Marius's grandfather. The old man insisted on giving up his bedroom, the best room in the house. "It will make me young again," he said. "I've always wanted to have a honeymoon in that room." And that just is a really weird statement to me. He filled it with old gay furniture and hung it with a remarkable material, golden flowers on a satin background. So after they are married, they're obviously going to be moving in with Monsieur Gillenormand, and it's just like, even though Jean Valjean is planning all of this, it just feels like he's thrown so much to the wayside, and that Cosette has just been completely absorbed into Marius's family now, and it's just like, it's so sad. Like, everything about Jean Valjean's life is just freaking sad. And the last chapter I read is another short one. It's just called Happiness in Dreams, and it's like, I don't even think there's anything to really say about it. It's just talking about how, like, Cosette would come with Jean Valjean to Monsieur Gillenormand's house every day to see Marius, and that's about it. The only paragraph worth reading is on page 1125, and it says, "All sorts of questions concerning Monsieur Fauchelevent, who treated him with a cool civility, were at the back of Marius's mind. His illness had left a gap in his memory, in which much had been lost. He found himself wondering whether he really could have seen that calm, sober man at the barricade, but no amount of happiness can prevent us from looking back into the past. There were moments when Marius, taking his head in his hands, recalled the death of Mabeuf, heard Gavroche singing amid the musket fire, and felt his lips pressed to Eponine's cold forehead. Enjolras, Courfeyrac, Jean Prouvaire, the figures of all his friends appeared to him and then vanished. Had they really existed, and where were they now? Was it true that they were all dead, all gone except himself? All that had vanished like the fall of the curtain at the ending of a play, and was he himself the same man? He had been poor, and now was rich, solitary, and now he had a family, desolate, and now he was to marry Cosette. He felt that he had passed through a tomb, black when he entered it, but white when he emerged, and the others had remained in it. There were moments when those figures from the past crowded in upon him and filled his mind with darkness. Then the thought of Cosette restored him to serenity. Nothing less than his present happiness could have washed out that disaster." And that's probably the best paragraph in these 3 chapters, because, like, there just really isn't much going on right now. And so that's really that chapter. So the next one is called Two Men Impossible to Find, and that's actually the last chapter of this book. And then I kind of skipped ahead because since there's, like, the appendixes in the back, I wanted to see what the last page of this book actually is. And it actually is pretty much exactly page 1200, and I'm on page, crap, I turned it, where am I? And I'm on page 1126. So I have less than 100 pages left of this. Like, oh my god, that's so weird. It just feels so strange to be almost done. And I feel like that's why I've kind of been, like, hesitant to pick this up so much lately, is I just don't want it to end kind of thing. So I feel like we are definitely going through, like, a little lull with the whole wedding planning and ceremony thing. I don't think that's going to be the most interesting. But then I think it's going to switch back over to the end of Jean Valjean's life. And that's probably where shit's gonna get real, and I'm probably gonna get really, really sad. So that's pretty much it for this week. I'm just gonna end it there. So as always, thank you for hanging out with me. It is greatly appreciated. And until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.